Hey, I'm Stephanie Feger, and Empower is my middle name. Well, not really, but it should be. I believe that empowered people empower people, and I'm obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it and want it and will buy it. As the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group and the author of 2 books myself, I have merged my love for reading books, writing books, and marketing books to help nonfiction authors with laser-focused strategies and tactics to write books that sell, promote books to those who need and want them most, and build meaningful businesses from empowering messages. Think of this as your one-stop shop for marketing insights from an author who has been there, done that, and understands exactly where you are. All right, so grab a warm beverage. Listen, y'all, I have a chai tea here waiting for me, and get a comfy blanket. Get your pens ready too, because I'm ready to empower you, aspiring author, on how to become an empowered writer. This is the Empowered Author Podcast. When I published my first book, I expected to be asked questions about the book's topic, where they could buy the book, and even if I could come speak to their groups about its powerful messages. But in addition to those expected questions, came the unexpected ones. Ones like, hey, Stephanie, I think I may want to write a book, but how in the world do I do that? Or, I already have a book I've written, but I haven't a clue what the next steps are. Will anyone want to read or buy my book? How in the world do I get published? Hint, hint, we talked about that today. And could I build a business from my book? Listen, these are great questions, and I've decided to devote an entire season of the Empowered Author Podcast to giving my take on each of these questions and more. And listen, by the end, be expected to not just be an empowered author, but also an empowered writer. Come on, let's go dive in. I remember when I was asked to speak to about 15 or 20 high schoolers who had a dream of being an author one day. It was such a dream for me to be able to go do this. And it just so happened that I got to speak to the high school I went to years ago. And I was so freaking excited to be there in that space. I remember asking this group of very tired girls, because I went to an all-girls high school. I asked them a very simple question, and it's one I want to ask you today. What is the difference between a writer and an author? All right, many of them said something that seems so, duh, right? They said, well, publishing, that's the difference. Being published is the only difference between being a writer and being an author. And while they are correct, I actually realized in my preparation for that class that there was really something else to consider too. You see, for me, it was this shift of seeing words as what matters to seeing the message as being what matters. You see, the words are still there in both of those, but when you publish, it's actually less about the power of each word and more about the power of them together to portray a message that the reader could really benefit from. You see, becoming an author is so much more than publishing a book. I realize that now, especially as I help authors across the world publish and launch their books regularly. But if this book, especially when the book is meant to allow people to connect and engage and inspire, it's meant to leave an impact. And that is bigger than a page and even words on a page, which feels a little odd saying out loud in our author world, but it's true. It's true. An author is bigger than that. So just because you want to be an author, I asked myself, and then I asked the students another question. What makes your book worthy of being published? And then they looked at me with deer in the headlights, big saucer eyes, not knowing what to say. And I shared with them this. I said, according to the writer Joseph Epstein, 81% of Americans feel that they have a book in them and they should write it. And then I did some math, and I did it today too. And that was before, because I'm not a math girl, I made sure I had these numbers. But that is approximately 200 million people who aspire to authorship. That's a lot of people. So how do you stand out? How do you do that? And I started to realize after working with dozens of authors that there's a couple of ways that you can stand out. You want to make sure you have quality writing first and foremost. While there are editors who can help you with that, there's really a difference between quality sentences and quality writing. So I'm really talking about development, story development, character development, pulling the details or creating the details that suck you in and a storyline that hooks you, being something that's relevant, reader-centric, and really going to impact people. That's quality writing. However, I always tell people this too, and this is not negative Nelly over here saying this. This is realistic Stephanie making this comment. And this comment is, in the world today, there is probably not a story or a message that's been written that hasn't been talked about before. But the difference between a story or a message that's already been shared and yours is your unique voice. So I always tell people when they come to me and say, Stephanie, how do I write a book? I say the first thing you need to do is start writing, because you need to figure out your unique voice, because your writing voice is going to be different from other people. And if it's not, you need to work on that, because your unique writing voice is going to be something that stands out. The fourth thing I say that I believe makes your book publishing worthy is relevancy. Does your story have relevancy in the world today? When I wrote my first book, there was a chapter in it that I wrote about a really horrific experience I had when I was in high school. And it was a sexual harassment situation that I never talked about because for fear of retribution, but I did decide to include it in my book. And it just so happened my book came out around the Me Too movement. So talking about something that was so vulnerable like that was welcomed and embraced. So it was relevant. It was very important. So I ask you the same question. Is your story relevant? Is your book relevant? Is your message relevant? And then the last one is it reader centric? Is it written in your voice, but with the reader front and center, not just you? So once you've kind of reflected on those and you go, yeah, Stephanie, my manuscript is amazing. It's definitely worthy of being published. But you would then sit there and go, oh my gosh, but what does that mean? Like, what is publishing? And oh my gosh, I don't even know how to navigate that. Yeah, this is where today's episode is meant for you. We're talking about publishing today. And my intention is to break down some myths, take aside different thoughts that you might have about publishing in general, kind of break through some of those and share some tips and pros and cons on the different types of publishing for you to consider. Because there are a lot of myths out there about publishing a book. Like the myth that there's publishers that are just waiting for your manuscript so that they will do all the promotion and make you all rich and famous. That's what most people think. But until you jump in, you really don't know what it's all cracked up to be. And I didn't either until I dove in. And now I get to work with lots of publishers and learn so much about the publishing industry that I can't wait to share with you. And the first myth that I want to break is this myth that there's only one way to publish. So I remember asking these students about what they thought publishing was all about. And they go, oh, well, I go give my book to somebody, my manuscript to someone, they publish it, and then they pay me. And I kind of giggled and go, yeah, okay. So that's this perspective of what traditional publishing looks like. And there are still some traditional publishers out there. There's just less. But that doesn't mean that they're not good and they're not there and there aren't other options. There's actually 4 different ways that you can publish. And we're going to dive into them. The first one is self-publishing. Then there's vanity publishing, which nobody talks about. Then there's collaborative or hybrid publishing. And then there's traditional publishing. So let's start with self-publishing. We live in a world where publishing has never been more easy. And self-publishing is also known in the industry as independent or indie publishing. What this means is that as the author, you undertake everything that both a publisher and an author would typically do. This means you write the manuscript and you own and navigate and manage all aspects of getting the book finished. This includes the editing, the proofreading, formatting, uploading, figuring out your publishing platform, and promoting it. So you carry a lot of weight and control, and there's beautiful things on self-publishing. And then there's some things I want you to be aware of. So let's talk about the beautiful things. Let's talk about the pros of self-publishing. When you self-publish, you get to control everything. And if you're a control freak, like I might be, not that I might be, like I am, self-publishing might be a really good solution for you because you get to dictate every step of your publishing process. You get to choose like what your cover design is going to look like and what your title looks like and what it is. You get to choose how you want the book to be laid out and where you want it to be published. And that might not seem like big deals, but they totally are, because some other types of publishing approaches don't allow you to pick cover design or your book title. Those are big deals. Another pro to self-publishing is ownership. And I want to talk about this for a minute because I didn't understand this. But depending upon your publishing approach and the publisher that you use, you actually might not own your content. Cool, right? Like, can you believe that? You might actually give your content to someone and they own it. In the self-publishing world, you don't have to worry about that because you own the rights to all of your content and any derivative work you want to do. Meaning, if you want to write a workbook, if you want to publish it in Spanish, if you want to do 4 editions of it, you own that. And that's a big deal. That was actually a really big, very important to me and a big deal to me in my process. Self-publishing is also, on the affordability scale, the most affordable option to go down outside of traditional publishing. However, we'll put some caveats in there when we go there. You get to determine how much you want to invest in your book. And when you think about that, this is actually the cheapest or the most affordable way to do that. But because of that, you are likely spending a less amount of money because you're not paying somebody to navigate the process unless you utilize what's called a supported self-publisher or a self-publisher that supports you in the self-publishing process. You might pay somebody there, but typically this is the most affordable way. And, you'll be able to make the most on your book in regards to sales and royalties because you're not paying anybody. Nobody's getting a cut of it. You've done all the legwork, the book's up, you make all the money. And that might be interesting to you and something that you love and that you find really intriguing. The last pro, there's probably many more though, but the last one I want to talk about is timeline. And this is important because as you go into the collaborative, hybrid, and traditional publishers, they tend to have a longer timeline. But in self-publishing, y'all, you get to choose the timing on everything. How fast or how slow you go, you get to make that choice. Now, there are some reasons that we might want to consider not self-publishing. If you lack the knowledge of navigating the self-publishing world, that might be overwhelming. Listen, just because you wrote the book doesn't mean you know how to publish it. And there are missteps you could take that could really impact the result of your book not being seen by the people you expect it to. Self-publishing, understanding Ingram Spark and KDP and all of those things can be overwhelming if you don't understand, and you might spend oodles and oodles of hours researching and finding that it would have just been more cost effective to invest in having someone help you. There's also, you might also lack knowledge in the fact that you don't know the steps that it would take to do a quality book, or if you've got the right people on your team. There's a greater learning curve on the self-publishing world. And if you don't have the time to set aside to do that and to learn how to publish, you could really make some grave errors, and it could be a large time suck for you. And then another con to consider is the quality concerns. So because you call all of the shots, there's a chance that the quality of your book isn't going to be as strong as it would be with a publisher. And that's because, you might opt to not have it edited. I know a lot of self-publishers who don't, and that terrifies me, but it's true. Or you might use a junior editor to create, or junior graphic designer to create your cover and format, and you might be missing things that someone who does this for a living really knows what to do. So quality is big, and actually because of that, many bookstores won't even consider self-published books to be included. Bookstores and libraries, I hate to break it to you, but that's true. Even if your book's amazing, there is a credibility issue too in the field with self-publishing. It used to be more intense than it is now. There's a lot of amazing self-publishers out there or self-published authors out there, and they've really upped the credibility. But there are so many people. You can literally submit something to Amazon's KDP and it could be total cruddy work, and it's likely going to be published. So because of that, people pause at times when they hear that you might consider self-publishing. So good, bad, indifferent. It's not right or wrong. But if you are focused on timing, you got to get something out and you got to get it out quick. If you understand the publishing process, if owning all of your content is something that matters to you, and if you are not worried about quality concerns because you have the right people in place to make your book successful, self-publishing could be a great option. Another type of publishing, and this is something you will never hear people talk about because they don't want to be known to do this, but it is what is called vanity publishing. You may hear vanity publishing, vanity press, or even, supported, self-supported. It's really a form of self-publishing, except it uses a vanity press to print and bind the book at the author's expense. So this can be a little tricky because many vanity publishers promote themselves as collaborative, hybrid, or even traditional publishers. And it causes people to be thinking they're getting a publisher, but really they're getting a vanity press, someone who is playing on their vanity. In essence, they're hiring a company or a host of others to print their book and distribute it on Amazon, on the basic platforms. Vanity publishers really, in essence, are not publishers. They're printers and distributors. They don't really typically offer editing services. Most don't really know a lot about designing a cover or finding the right title or even describing the book in a way that will help it sell. And most do what the name implies. It plays off of an author's vanity. Listen, when you search vanity publishers, you're not going to find anything popped up. So it's kind of like a hidden thing in the industry. But it's something I want you to keep your eyes open for. Now, there's some pros to vanity publishing, right? Like, you can publish anything. As long as you got the money and you bring it to the table, they're going to do it. So there's no screening or selection process. This is really good for those who are just looking to print something and give it to their family and friends. My grandfather wrote a book, which is so cool, but he had no intention of publishing it to the masses. He just wanted to publish it for our family. So a vanity press was perfect for him. And it worked out great. It was really, really a great book. But it was literally a company that printed whatever they said. We found typos in it later, and it was still phenomenal. Believe me, I love every bit of it. But he leveraged a vanity publisher. The other thing is vanity publishing really allows you to still have that control. It gives authors so much freedom in content design and layout. And if you literally just need some books in hand, then it might be a great solution for you, right? It might be, let me backtrack, a great solution. I tend to think out of all of them, this is one I struggle with most because they don't value the editing process. I'm a big believer that you must edit. And so kind of a trigger, if you find a publisher and they don't acknowledge the need for a selection process for you to get in and they don't require editing, that's likely a vanity press, just saying. All right, some cons of vanity publishing is it's got a negative association in the industry. The writing publishing industry is very highly aware of who the vanity publishers are, and they get very frustrated by them because they put a bad rap on the name. They typically don't do great quality. The publisher doesn't really care about the quality of the work. They just are looking for the upfront investment, and you will be paying an upfront investment to get the book published. There's really no economic incentive for the publisher to get the books into the hands of readers since their target market is really the authors themselves. So what I mean by that is their goal is to make money from the author in the beginning part, but they have no cut of the royalties on the back end. They don't, and that is neither right nor wrong. It's just good to know because if a publisher doesn't make a cut or anything of the book's success on the back end, then they don't really spend a lot of energy on ensuring the book is quality from the beginning. And that's not true for everybody. I don't mean to say that in generality terms, but it is good to know. I mean, and if you think about it, they will do their best, but the reality is they're running a business where their audience is you, the author, from the beginning. And, I have this as a con because unethical as a con because some people in this industry really feel like it's unethical that a vanity press acts like they're a publisher when really they're just confusing the author and they're a printer and a distributor. Hey, I'm popping in here for just a second to see if you are serious about writing a book. And not just writing any book, but writing a book that will make a difference, will leave a legacy, and will sell. After getting asked time and time again about how to write a book people will want and will buy, I decided to create the Empowered Writer program. a signature program here at the Empower PR Group that provides aspiring authors with the tools they need to bring their messages from their minds to the masses and do it in a way that will ensure their books are the ones readers want, need, and most importantly, will buy. With a mix of self-guided content and one-on-one coaching from yours truly, this program will help you achieve various levels of success, including understanding and writing to your niche, the development of a stronger manuscript and book, and the guidance you need to bring that book to life. Finally, visit theempoweredprgroup.com/theempoweredwriter to get all the details. And listen, let's schedule time to chat and see if this program or any of our other programs are a good fit for you. Okay, enough about this. Let's get back to the conversation. A third type of publishing is what is called collaborative publishing or hybrid publishing. You will hear that in the industry. And what that means is it takes the benefits of self-publishing and the benefits of traditional publishing, and it merges them together. So what that typically looks like is it allows you to have all of the great things that you get when you self-publish, but at a quality that you would get at a traditional publishing. So here's some of the pros. You still will typically have ownership of your work and any of its derivatives. And I can't express how important that was for me. And it's something I didn't realize was so important, but it might not be important to you. And if it's not, that's okay. Just make sure that you use that as you're deciding what is the right publishing approach. Another pro is you have a team of experts. So you have a publisher that knows what they're doing and has a team, and you can trust them. A third pro is there's this joint risk reward kind of thing in place. So there are upfront costs for the author. So you will be doing an upfront investment, right? Which is not what many authors originally, if you're not in the industry, expect. It allows you to become a part of the publishing group really for a lifetime. We'll talk about this marriage I'm talking about. And they will make most of their money from upfront costs. But they do get some of the royalties on the back end, as do you. You should be getting a higher percentage of royalties, but that publisher will also get some of the royalties. Your return on investment, too, will be higher since you have a group of people who can direct you in the process. And that's important, especially if you haven't a clue what you're doing. And from a timeline perspective, you might be thinking, what does that look like? And usually it's about 6 to 9 months to have maybe 6 months to a year to have a collaborative or a hybrid publisher help you out. Now, some of the bad things could be that timeline, right? Like it might not work on your schedule with what you need this book to do for you. And if that's the case, I would encourage you to look at self-publishing. Another con is upfront costs. So the author is impacted by a higher cost, and usually it's a pay-for-play experience. So there's usually an editing cost. The publishing in generality has a cost. The editing is typically associated with word count. If you want a website or marketing efforts, that's usually an added cost. So these different costs could easily and quickly add up, but there are likely some non-negotiables like editing and the publishing process, but maybe you don't want to do the ebook or audiobook, or maybe marketing is something you want to tackle on your own or leverage somebody else, like, I don't know, the Empower PR Group. But there is a con for some people that there is an upfront cost. Another con is what I call the right fit. You want to make sure that both you are the right fit for the publisher and the publisher is the right fit for you. And most collaborative or hybrid publishers, you will have to be selected to be a part of their publishing team or leverage their publishing team on your project. So it's not anybody can be a part of this. It's a selective process. And another con is marketing. So while you can pay for marketing, the author tends to own most of the responsibility. And that should be a con for self-publishing and a con for vanity publishing and a con for traditional publishing too, because to be completely honest, all of the marketing falls on everybody. It's just typically how it goes. The authors need to be a part of that marketing process, because even with the traditional publisher, which we will talk about here shortly, I find many traditional publishers that don't help with the marketing aspect either. Speaking of traditional publishing, let's go down that path, because this is the one that most authors think about in the first place. This is what they dream of, finding a company that will pay for their work up front and make it all happen, and it will just be rainbows and butterflies and tons of flowers and just this glorious experience. This is true for some people, and if so, this is usually where the authors bear no responsibility for upfront costs, which sounds really great and is awesome. So let's talk about some of the pros of traditional publishing. Typically, you have a literary agent who does pitching for you, so you get more time to write, which is awesome, especially if you love to write. And side note, not all authors love to write. I found that to be interesting. The other thing is it's a pro is that you get chosen. So typically the author is chosen to be a part of a traditional publisher, and that just feels cool, right? Like to be chosen and be a part of this exclusive team. A favorite pro is an advance. What that means is the author, the publisher may pay you to write the book in the way that they want you to write it. Now, I do know of a traditional publisher that doesn't do a pay advance, which I thought was interesting, but that's totally fine. It's just something new that I didn't know existed, and the industry continues to evolve. But many people think that this is what the publishing process is like, and that advance is something that they get excited about. Another pro is there's no upfront cost. The publisher handles it all. And again, you likely get an advance. And you get a team of experts who know what they're doing, and you don't have to worry about it. So there are some cons to traditional publishing. And if this is the only way you thought that publishing existed, you might have not even thought about these. So let's take a minute and dive in. A con could be that you actually have a literary agent, which means you have to hire someone who has to like your manuscript enough to seek a publisher for it. So it's not like any literary agent will do anything. You have to find the right one, and that can take time. You could also have a loss of control. So you typically don't have control over your book title, your cover design, the pricing strategy, translations, anything else, derivative work that tends to usually be, when you get an advance, you're usually giving your book over to them for them to own. And that's a little challenging. You lose a lot of your intellectual property rights through traditional publishing. Now, from a timeline perspective, it could take you years of rejections to get a contract. So if time is something you really need and to be on your side, traditional publishing is likely not your approach. I'm talking years to just get it, and who knows, your content might actually be outdated by that point. So in regards to royalties, usually leveraging a traditional publisher, you will make less because they are paying you in advance. And typically there's a threshold of how many books you need to sell before you'll ever get a cut of the royalties. So there are some authors out there who are best-selling authors, and they might only be making like 20 or 30,000 on the book because they haven't met that threshold. It's kind of sad to hear. But again, they don't have any upfront costs. So, it's a give and take. And there's also this marketing misconception that I think is a con too, because people think traditional publishers mean there's all this marketing that's done, and there usually isn't. You still have to market your own book. I hate to break it to you, but marketing is something you're going to always have to do. So learn to love it, my author friend. So how do you know what type of publishing approach to go for? Which one's the right one? Oh, how do you pick a publisher? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of tips. So outside of the self-publishing, I really, these tips are really good for the hybrid collaborative publisher, which tends to be where most people nowadays are living. It's very hard to be part of the traditional publishing approach. It can be done. Don't get me wrong. I know people who have. Typically, if time is something you're looking for, many people in the nonfiction author space will go the hybrid or collaborative publisher route. So here's a couple of my favorite tips on how to find the right collaborative hybrid publisher, and you could possibly use this too for traditional publishing. The first one is, do y'all mesh? Do y'all get along? This is kind of like a marriage. My publisher, I will never forget, she shared with me that it's like high school when, you get a new set of freshmen in every year, but no one ever graduates from the publisher. Same thing in a marriage, right? Like, you get married and you're kind of in it for a lifetime. Depending upon the contract, you could always change. Don't feel like you're stuck in there, but you're probably going to be in it for quite some time, years, decades maybe, with that. So you want to make sure you mesh with that publisher. Another question, do you like their publishing approach? I have an author I've had the chance to work with on 3 of his books, and each of them have been with different publishers. And I've realized the nuanced efforts around their different publishing approaches. Like, do they use POD, which stands for print on demand, or do they purchase in bulk at wholesale and store it in a warehouse? Like there's different reasons for which one they like, and there's different reasons on why you may or may not like that. So I want you to think about what type of publishing approach you would like and why. For instance, I tend to like the print on demand for myself because that means I don't have to pay for a ton of upfront costs to print the books and store them on an ongoing basis. That when somebody wants a copy of my book, they can order it and it's printed and sent to them. So there's not a lot of upfront costs for that. But I do sacrifice a little bit of quality there because when you do bulk wholesale purchase, you tend to be able to get some of the coolest things done with your books. And some of the books I have in my bookshelf have beautiful spot colors throughout that I know have to be done through the bulk purchase and warehouse process. So there are pros and cons, and you just want to understand your goals and if the publisher is in alignment. You also want to know and ask yourself, do you like their quality? So go buy some of their books. Hold them, smell them. I'm a book smeller. That sounds funny, but I love to smell the book pages. It just brings me joy. And really take a look and see if you like how the book is formatted, the layout, all of that type of stuff. It will tell you something about that publisher. And I also say, that phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. I do kind of think you should judge a publisher by the cover, because if the cover is kind of cruddy, then the formatting might be cruddy. That's not a fail-safe for everything, but I do think it's something to consider and take a look at. Are their covers professional? Are they in alignment with what you think you would want your book to look like? Another question to ask is, do you like the feedback they're getting? So ask that publisher if you can talk to a couple of people that they've published, authors that they've published before, see some of their previous clients, get their feedback. Now, keep in mind that the publisher's only going to share good experienced authors with you, but still, if you know the right questions to ask, you might be able to understand if that's in alignment with what you're looking for. You can also ask if they work within your niche. So, are you a Christian author? Did you write children's books? Do you write poetry or fiction or leadership? There's so many types of publishers out there. And I would really encourage you to find a publisher that understands your niche and publishes for that, because the layout, the color, the marketing, all that stuff is really, really nuanced to each. And you want somebody who understands that. A couple other questions. Do you like their communication style and approach? Like, are you somebody that needs to jump on the phone or do face-to-face meetings, or is email okay with you? Understand that and figure out and ask them. Does your timeline and their timeline work, and are they in alignment with your goals? Maybe they're 6 months, 12 months out, and that's just not going to work. Or maybe that works perfectly. Do you understand and know what all is included? So if you are going the hybrid collaborative publishing route, you're going to do an investment in the front end. And y'all, we're talking, anywhere between $6,000 and $40,000. I hate to throw that out there. I have seen and heard of some of these collaborative publishers that are on that higher end. But typically, it might be, I don't know. I find that many great ones are around the 10,000, 12,000, something like that. And, do you know what all comes with that price point? Like, you should know what your investment dollars, what's coming with that investment. And then you need to figure out if that investment makes financial sense for you. Like, does that make sense on your upfront costs? Will you be able to recoup that? And what do royalties look like? And in my opinion, the higher the upfront cost, the higher your royalties should be. So double check that. You might even want to get a lawyer to look at that contract. And listen, my last tip for you is probably one of the most important ones, at least in my opinion, and that is, do you trust them? Like, what is your gut saying? Because your gut is going to tell you stuff that logically you might not even know that you need to know. So listen to your gut and trust it. Listen, there are no right or wrong options here. In fact, there's beautiful things and not so great things about all of the publishing approaches. And that's why I wanted to break it out to you in the pros and cons this way, for you to really consider and figure out what your goals are and which approach might help you with it. Listen, depending upon your contract with a traditional publisher or collaborative publisher, you very well could switch the type of publishing approach later. I have heard of collaboratively published authors later getting an agent, having later another edition be traditionally published. I've heard of collaborative publishers shifting to self-publishing. So depending upon your contract, that can be switched. So don't feel like you're stuck in that marriage if you want a divorce, but just make sure you read that contract and understand it before you sign it. And listen, in a world where anyone can publish literally anything, just make sure your book stands out. Please do that for me. Choosing a publishing approach is a personal choice, and depending upon your goals and your needs, it may vary between you and another author, and that is okay. As long as you come to the table with open eyes and open ears and clarity on what you want to get and what you're going to get and what you don't, you should be fine. You might want to have somebody who understands the industry take a peek at your contract or give you some advice. I know I'm happy to. If you want to grab a 15-minute chat with me, I'd be happy to talk about a great publishing approach for you. Just go to the website, empowerprgroup.com, and schedule a 15-minute chat, and I would love to share with you my thoughts. However, just be prepared, whatever publishing approach that you go down, to be in process alongside your publishing team. This is your book. This is your message. You're writing it for a reason. So make sure you get the right team and trust them, and then allow them to guide you in the process. Good luck, my author friend. Whatever your reason, one thing remains true. Writing a book is one thing, and marketing it is something altogether different. That's where we come in. The Empower PR Group loves helping authors market their books. But we also realize that one of the best ways to market and sell a book is to write a book that people will buy in the first place. The Empowered Writer Program is one of the Empower PR Group's signature programs dedicated to helping aspiring writers who have begun drafting their manuscripts ensure that they're writing books that both meet their needs and those of their readers. The program is a 12-week collaborative experience that includes a mix of self-guided content and reflection with dedicated one-on-one coaching with myself, Stephanie Fager of the Empower PR Group. And we will take a deep look at your manuscript to ensure that it's prepped and ready for whatever publishing journey you want to embark upon. I would love to chat with you to see if this program is a good fit for you and to talk publishing options if you'd like. Visit empowerprgroup.com/theempoweredwriter to learn more. All right. Now you know this. I'm a believer that empowered people empower people. I've empowered you, aspiring author and one day published author. Now it's your turn to empower others.